Good afternoon and welcome to the City Council Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, October 19th, 2023. Mr. Francisco, we'll go right into you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really didn't have much to talk about the monthly reports. I will just note, for Councilmember Holman's usual attention,
Yeah, no, it's
we were flat in October, and that is, kind of below the average for the metro area, but we're still hanging in there okay. I am interested to see what will happen next month, and if we're on a just flat trend, or if that's kind of gonna start to work itself out, and we'll get back to our 2% growth projection for the fiscal year. But at least right now, we are a bit below projection, and we'll continue to monitor things and see how it's going. I just wanted to get further direction from council about our discussions that we had with the school board members related to the school resource officer program. My understanding from those meetings is that council wants to proceed with putting an agenda item on for, I believe, the November the 14th meeting, and whatever that first meeting in November is, off consent, related to adding the 4 school resource officers that are mandated by the public safety sales tax 2 ordinance, with no additional contribution from the school district, but also no cutting out of their contribution from the school district. That's my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that's what staff is directed to do.
That was my understanding as well. Yes.
I remember asking about their grant, which they said they would be supplementing, which would not be supplanting, and they
You're
could
talking
apply
about the
that.
state, the 90,000
Yes.
roughly?
I know that they wanted to use it on metal detectors, but this PSST2 said jointly funded, and they have the resources literally from the state to do it. It's unfortunate the state won't give them money to do mental health, but they can at least contribute in this way, because as I understand it, it's our position to protect our budget. So,
Did you want that written into the resolution?
If that's
Again,
possible.
I don't know if it's,
What I understood from that conversation was that it was, the money had not been let to them yet, that it was pending somewhere in the very nebulous future. And we didn't really have a process by which they could get it. It wouldn't be a problem to put it in there in when it's available, that would help, but I would hate to, if it's not available to them, there isn't any money, from what I understood, that they could afford to.
yeah, my understanding of where that is very similar to where we were with the ARPA money. Before the regulations had been finally drafted and approved. That they knew the money was gonna be coming, but that they didn't know the exact amount or when it would come. But if you wanted us to write the resolution such that we're sort of including that as their contribution for this fiscal year, we certainly
I mean, they would sign an MOU that says they're gonna do that too, right? That,
I don't know that.
okay, how does
The-
that work if
The
we write
MOU is
it?
based on current expenses.
Okay.
And, they're to pay half of what are agreed to current expenses. So that wouldn't be increased by them getting more money. It would just be, what it is. Now, each year, when we do the projected expenditures, usually they end up spending more, on the program than we projected. It's usually because of overtime. Now, don't know if that'll be the case this year, but that's certainly what has happened in the past.
Is that something an internal auditor can look into around overtime? Like how much of it is really necessary or how much of it is being misappropriated?
Absolutely. That's certainly something council could direct an internal auditor to do. And I know that when that position was first discussed by council, that was one of the assignments that you wanted them to look into. Not just related to the SRO program, but just police overtime in general.
Okay. Thank you.
I have
Oh, yes.
So in the meeting, we had the, sheet that was passed out about how much we can expect in this fiscal year 24 for the school district to pay, and they are saying that it is about $100,000 more than they were paying in previous years.
That's correct.
So, okay, and I remember in the last conversation that we had on the schedule of like our budget for the next year, that there is a point in April-ish, when we talked to the school district about future projections. Is that what you were talking about? So if this item passes with the 4 SROs that are voter approved through PSST2, then we would have an opportunity to have a conversation about that funding for the next fiscal year with them at that time.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And then when we talk about the funding, that doesn't update the MOU specifically?
Not at
No.
that time.
Okay, it's just related to like the cost sharing.
Yeah, the action that council would take based on this resolution is just to appropriate the money to add the 4 positions this fiscal year, based on what we project the cost to be. And then we would the normal process for negotiating that MOU. But my understanding is that there was to be no, the additional cost of the 4 was not to be included into the negotiated MOU cost with them for next fiscal year. And you'll recall that that's not an assumption that we made when the scenario projections that we sent out. We just assumed that they were gonna keep with the amount that they had been appropriating in past years with sort of a 5% inflator. But 4 added positions is more than 5%. It's just that that's the assumption that we made.
Yeah, I think that I would like to see in the conversations that we are going to negotiate with them about the additional officers that we bring on. I don't want to get into a position where, we've said, oh, well, because the school district can fund it, that we're gonna continue to fund those 4 without a cost share in perpetuity. So I would like us to have those negotiating opportunities for those 4 in the future.
Sure.
However, that needs to be.
But not included in this year's, because it's hard to include something that's not there yet.
I would say, you mean for fiscal year 24?
Yes, ma'am. If they get it in 24.
I don't think
that's-
my understanding is that the council member is not talking about the money from the state.
Oh,
She
okay.
just wants us
I'm
to,
misunderstanding, okay.
No, I'm just talking about future fiscal years and the cost share that we're gonna have, which will include the full 13 moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not talking what Councilmember Grant is talking about, but
Okay.
yeah, just, I don't want it to ever feel like we're just saying we're stagnating at this time. Like, I think that we can continue to negotiate with the school district as we move forward, based on how, their budget cycles go and funding that they have available for this type of thing.
I'll also take the opportunity to say that I'm uncomfortable with just getting this funded without having that MOU negotiated. There's some questions around the program that I feel maybe we could address in the MOU regarding the things that I don't want to sweep under the rug, which have come out from our community. Around some of the negative impacts with some SROs. I remember school board talking about all the positive ones, but it's really the negative ones that we should be looking to improve upon. So what would be the process? Could we do that first before trying to fund this?
yes, in the April-ish renegotiation of the MOU for next fiscal year, we can certainly include that. Remember that it's basically every 5 years or so that we renegotiate the terms of what's in the MOU. On an annual basis, we just talk about the amount of money. But we can certainly include that sort of a concern in this coming April for next fiscal year.
Thank you.
So does that give you enough information to go forward?
I believe so.
Okay.
I just have another
Yes, ma'am.
question on the similar kind of line of thinking from Councilmember Grant. I think that it's really important that the program as a whole is really in flux, from what I understand, because the school district is not just wanting the 4 that are approved in PSST2, but then bringing on an additional 13 to cover and staff every single elementary school. And so I don't know that that conversation is fully done. And so like I think that there are still more conversations that need to be had on what is the agreement that they're potentially asking, because I don't know that I got a lot of answers on what that funding mechanism is going to look like and who is funding those additional 13. And so I think that within that MOU conversation or future conversations about how those additional 13 are being staffed, I think that like us, the county and the school district have more conversations that need to go forward. I didn't get a lot of answers on.
And again, that's,
That
our
funding
direction
piece.
is just about the
I
4 right
understand,
now.
but
In the scenarios that you had though, remember that the 4 is basically scenario 2. And that's gonna be costing us, the general fund subsidy is about $1.5 million per year, inflating at 5% going forward. The scenario 3 of adding the additional 13 is not on the table right now. We were
Yes.
just showing you what we think it would cost.
yeah, I understand that, but I don't think that that conversation is going away. And I don't think that, I mean, the county has said that they don't want to fund that moving into the future. So if the school district is going to continue to have those 13, my bet is that they're going to turn back around and have to ask questions to the city. So like, yes, I understand that right now we are only talking about this for scenario 2, but like, I don't think that that conversation is done. I'm just kind of putting that out there that future conversations are still going to be needed about this
I would agree.
program.
That's Councilmember.
Yes, so my concern about this was the overtime and what we're paying in that compared to just going ahead and filling the positions, right? And fulfilling the voter obligation part of it. And so, I think what caught me off guard was the cost, because I thought it would be in the 400 to 500, and then the 900 and cars and stuff like that, and questions about should this be the source to pay for cars? And then we already voted to get 18 new cars a few months ago for the police department.
Replacement.
Right, replacing. So that's kind of where, like, why I supported postponing too, is those questions and not having anybody from MPS to talk to during the meeting either. So I'm still in the same position where I'd like to get the voter-approved obligation taken care of. I'd like to not be paying overtime for having our existing SROs going around. And I don't even know how that's working now, because I guess our current ones don't need to go around now because the elementary schools all have a deputy there, right? So,
That's what I understand them to be.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee it.
so I would, if we were to approve going ahead with the 4 positions, I definitely would want that to be part of the yearly negotiation we have with MPS about the joint funding. I think when it comes to expanding the program, what I said to MPS was I think that would take a voter-approved expansion of the public safety sales tax. And if that's what people want, then that's what they could vote on. And I don't think there would be concern about it repealing the existing PSST, but to me, it would be an expansion, not a question of replacing it. I mean, and so, I would like to get these positions settled and before next school year, really. But again, since may not be paying overtime anymore, so now I don't know, because,
Well, to interrupt you,
Yeah.
if we could have a track record on that, when overtime keeps on, I realize we'll be a couple of months behind in that, but as we see how much that is, how effective was it to get 4 people in there to cut the overtime budget into some fraction? I think is a wise idea. And be able to understand what the impact of 13 times that, or almost 13 and more individuals will be. And have that as a discussion for planning over 3 years, 4 years, some kind of,
yeah. I
Long-
mean, that's what I recall
longer
the
term.
chief saying, was 3 years just to that's how long it would take to fill that many positions
I
with normal
think-
police officers.
And I'd rather add a year on there just for safety, just
Yeah.
the idea of doing that, I think is a wonderful kind of thing that we ought to have another, not a study session, but sitting down of a Saturday and just doing that kind of work, getting those kinds of ideas with public schools, with Anthony, of course, if you can, when we do that. So that we can have a more accurate approach to doing it, not do it analytically, not emotively, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think that would be a wonderful thing, because it may not be doable. It may come up in projections that 13 just doesn't work, 6 works, 5 work, whatever that number is. I've never owned a Mercedes, you know.
Well, I wonder what the scenario would be too if Norman Public Schools decided they wanted to just have the deputies take
Okay.
over the whole thing. Like,
And that's a question. It's not what, I don't think it's what I'm speaking for the police chief.
I haven't heard them say they wanted to do
Yeah.
that, but if it,
But that's another one of those things. What are all the scenarios? What's the best solution? I think that's a great time that we could sit down and just do a council.
well, I
Exactly.
think deputies are paid less than
They
our
are.
city police too. So
They are. But again, if
I would
it's
wonder about that.
130,000 times 13 versus 110,000 times 13,
right,
it's a lot of money.
I don't know, but what I heard the sheriff say in our meeting was that he doesn't think that the deputies should be, or that the county should be covering the cost for SROs. Like that should be between the municipality and the school district. So I can't anticipate,
You're right.
based on what he has said so far, that they would want to take over the whole program. Because then where's the complete funding coming from? for
And I
that?
think that'd be a good assumption on our part, just taking an assumption to figure it
Yeah.
out.
I got the same impression during my meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be us. And how do we want to do it? What plan do we want to make? I think takes a lot more than sitting down for a half an hour and sketching something on a pad. It takes some real cooking to get that so that we've got it right. But for this year,
well, we'll have the contract for the public safety assessment
Study.
on the next agenda. I'm not sure.
I think
they picked
I haven't
somebody.
looked at the next.
I thought they
Yeah,
said the
that's
next
what
I
agenda.
think that's this coming Tuesday.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So may have a lot better idea too of what, in addition to SROs, what we might need to ask
And there-
voters to consider.
And there are other questions to ask in their population growth, where the population is growing. If we're densifying downtown, what happens to the schools that are older, that are downtown? What's public schools gonna do with that? All those kinds of questions. And I think that just having an open forum for us to be able to discuss that with the participants, with the partners, would be a good, healthy discussion. Yes, ma'am.
No, sorry. I'm reading.
I would just remind everyone, and I see my friend Sean is here, so I'm going to speak for him because I know this is going to be in his thinking. Just remember that if you add 13 or 23 additional police cars, you're going to need 1 or 2 additional mechanics.
Yes.
And you're going to need, there are other costs related to growing personnel or equipment. Just know that and keep that in your mind. I don't know that that's a charge of the public safety study, but it does need to be in the finance committee's mind.
Wouldn't hurt, would it?
I do have a question. So do we have to buy the cars through this avenue if it was just personnel and the cost associated with personnel?
I don't know that individually assigned vehicles are a contractually bound item, but I do know that it's certainly a practice. And the union would have a difficult time with adding 13 additional personnel.
I was thinking more the 4. Sorry, I know we're getting conflated because the ask was large and then we had to break it down, so
Yeah,
for
see, the 4, again, conceptually speaking, if the 4 are supposed to be floating between 17 schools, they need a car.
Okay.
I mean, that's the concept anyway.
Yeah, so just thinking about, again, the public schools portion, that they're supposed to cover, and how is that fair, you know?
Yeah, I have same kind of question about that is like, 4 positions, do we need 4 new police cars? We have 100 in the fleet or so, and we're replacing 18 of them, but every officer, whether they're on duty or not, contractually has to have one that they take
Yeah,
on?
I don't know, I can't say
They're
contractually.
like, I'm just
But I
wondering, is there
do know
4
that-
floating in the fleet that we could do? I don't know if that would make it easier for the rest of council if we were just voting on these positions and not.
It could,
everything
but
else,
what, the
but-
way I've had it explained to me before in the past, it wasn't during this discussion. But the reason police officers have to have a vehicle with them or a unit with them is if they need to respond. If we had some kind of emergency that we were pulling everybody from everywhere, go back to the swatting thing at OU. They have to have, they can't run.
Well, we have 160 currently patrol, so they don't all have cars though.
I don't
Or
know.
there's X amount of the fleet that's like rotating.
There's not a lot of extra that are just sitting there.
Right.
I mean, that's part of the evaluation each year, to look at which ones we can retire and which ones have to be replaced, so. I would look to, Anthony said it right, I would look to the police chief to kind of guide us on where they think they are with the current assignment of vehicles. There's been extras in recent years because they've been down so many officers, but as they're filling back up, my understanding is we're at the vehicle quota.
Okay, yeah, I knew there was, I don't know if I recall a number before that was like half of them were take home and the other half were basically on patrol 24 hours because they
Last
were,
time I checked, we're about.
the next shift would come in and they'd swap out their equipment and
About 115, 120 take home right now, but that's
Okay.
what last time I looked at the inventory.
I think it's more like 3/4, 1/4.
okay. Interesting.
It is. It's a bigger problem than just going down and funding something, as you say. It mushrooms with other people, other responsibilities and maintenance costs, et cetera. And I'm just glad we're getting some of these cars that look like they've been in Israel lately.
They're gonna get beat up
Oh, yeah.
by hail in a few months probably, as soon as we get them.
Hopefully not. Hopefully
I
not.
also have another question related to additional employment. So, did we already have a need for mechanics that didn't get filled? But how many positions did
There
you
were
not
2
fill?
additional mechanics included in PSST too.
Okay,
So I'm just saying we need to follow that same sort of a concept.
And those were fulfilled.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, these are the last 4 positions in PSST. I mean, we voted to fund the dispatchers. I don't know if they filled them yet, but these are the last 4 that are left. That we
When
have.
I asked Daryl about that, I got the impression that they are waiting until after the new
Yeah.
COC, no, it's not, ECOC has been being put together. And then we'll have room for them because you can't put them down there in that basement anymore.
So these 4 positions and Fire Station 5 are the last things to do that voters approved that haven't started, I guess, already. So
And that's, and moving 5 has to be made off the public safety survey that's being done, that decision and all the rest. So we're still waiting on some
And the
other.
debt.
I would, the fire chief, I haven't heard that from the fire chief.
Oh.
If anything, I would think that at least where they have talked about putting Fire Station 5 would only be reinforced by the turnpike. I mean, that seems like it'd be a really good spot. If the turnpike is basically on 72nd Street and this is gonna be on 120th basically, that seems to work really well.
Yes, sir.
But
But that's an excellent, that's an excellent conversation. It's just getting the promises that were made fulfilled.
well, like Anthony said before, the debt from the radio system and the EOC, when that's paid off, that frees up the funds to do it. Or we could do it sooner if we come up with another source or whatever, but if we want to wait. And I think last time you said like 26, 27, probably before that one. But that would fulfill the existing.
critical capital. needs.
Existing voter approved things in PSST. Those 4 positions in that station, so.
And all the firemen from PSST two
They've
are
been
hired.
added.
Yeah.
From first PSST.
Yeah.
Was
It,
30 firefighters, 41 police.
Quite a few people.
Yeah.
But it's been worth it, I guess. Anyway. Other questions or thoughts for Mr. Francisco? All right.
That's all I have, sir.
That's all you have? All right. Well, then what I suggest we do is adjourn.